In case you couldn't tell from the title of the video and the thumbnail, this is about me ranking the consumable items into a tier list. I haven't included the Thieves' Tools or Trap Disarm Kit because they are very specific in their use, can't be used in combat, can't even double click on them to use them. I have here 31 items. I've grouped together, I'll get to it later, but I've grouped together all the potions of resistance, so I don't have to go over every single one. Do let me know if I've missed any. I think I've got most of them, the large majority of them at least. So we're starting with critical hit at the top, meaning it will always be useful. You wish you always had these in your inventory. Critical miss is, there's clearly a better choice as an alternative to this item, or kind of like, why would you ever use this item? Anyway, I'm going to go through them alphabetically. I've got Lae'zel here with a copy of each item, or 10 of most. Starting with the Acid Vial. One thing we will be taking into account are, does it use an action or bonus action? Does the item have some sort of AoE effect, or is it just for a single creature? So the Acid Vial, we can see that it's got a large range to be able to be used with, so you can throw it quite far. And it has an AoE kind of splash effect. So what I can try and do is throw it to here. One of them passed a saving throw, so they take a dexterity saving throw against, it says Fireball's DC 13. I don't think that's really quite true. It seems to be a set value of 13. And so yeah, it did some acid damage, and anyone standing inside the effect has the acid condition, which reduces armor class by 2, even for the one that passed its dexterity saving throw. So where am I going to put this? I think this can be quite good, but you have to be careful with when you use it, because the damage is only okay. 2d6 is worse than an individual attack from Lae'zel, but part of that is because she's wielding a greatsword, which does 2d6 damage anyway. But we do need to keep in mind it is an area of effect. So when I said you have to be careful, is the acid condition only lasts while the enemies are standing in it. Had these two skeletons here had their turn immediately after Lae'zel, it would kind of be pointless for Lae'zel to throw it, because they're very likely to walk out of it. I think this is a solid B item. There will definitely be some better choices, even if it is just an attack, because the damage is quite low. So against enemies such as goblins, it could be quite good because they tend to have low hit points. And it can be good against bosses to reduce their armor class. But if you don't have someone who's going to be using an attack roll after using the Acid Vial, then it could be a waste of the Acid Vial. Next up is Alchemist's Fire. Now Lae'zel is going to use Action Surge for us, and then use some Alchemist's Fire. And it's quite similar to the Acid Vial. So let's throw it at someone different. Let's throw it over there. We can see the target is obscured by shadows, which is something I want to show off. Oh, well, that somehow blew him up and killed him. It's hard to say why he took quite so much damage, because he had 20 hit points. Don't know if it's because it hit the fissured stalactite. One nice thing now though is that we can't really see it, this area is now lit up. Now what Alchemist Fire says it does is it does 1d4 damage and then deals 1d4 fire damage and creates a fire surface. And that fire surface can cause 1d4 damage on the next turn. Now hold this here. The range of the explosion is 20 feet, much higher than the Acid Vial, but the damage is lower. Probably a maximum of 2d4 damage, one for the turn that it's thrown and one for the next turn. But one extra benefit about Alchemist's Fire is it can set some things alight. Anything that's flammable, Alchemist's Fire is something you can use. And I'm going to stick it at B. It's not the be all and end all of any fight. It's a way to give your martial characters perhaps an AoE attack, but the damage is low. However, it has some utility. And a large radius, well, that radius is a double-edged sword, because you have to make sure your allies are out of the way also. Next up is Antitoxin. I'm not going to take this now. So it provides advantage on saving throws against poison and cures poison creatures. I mean, it is what it is. It doesn't really come up too often. I'm having a hard time placing this. I'm going to leave it at C, only because we don't come across the poison condition too much in the game. Perhaps I'm misremembering that. If you guys think that this is more important, I wouldn't be surprised if it's a bit higher. It's kind of nice to have on you, just in case, but you won't find yourself using it a huge amount. Next up will be some arrows. We've got Acid, Darkness, Fire, Ice, Ilmater, Lightning, and Roaring Thunder. I'm going to go through 4 of them kind of quite quickly together, being arrows of Acid, Fire, Ice, and Lightning. So maybe I should wait until... Does anyone have an action left? Well, Gal doesn't have a ranged weapon. Right, Shadowheart. She obviously can't fire all of them, but let's give her some arrows of acid for now. In the item Oh, she doesn't have a ranged weapon either. That was a mistake, so we're going to have to wait until Lae'zel's next turn. So the Arrow of Acid next. It's a bit like the Acid Vial, except it's a ranged attack. So this is only going to be good for characters who have a good ranged attack. Now I wonder if there's somewhere light over there that Lae'zel will be able to see. That's better. So it does 1d6, and that's because she's using a short bow. So 1d6 plus 1 damage, and then an extra 1d4 acid damage with a 7-foot explosion radius. So I can try and hit... I could try and aim it here to hit 2 of them. Let's try that again. So both of them have to make a saving throw. And if they pass, then... Oh, sorry, not a saving throw. Oh, it is. Sorry. Roll to hit, and then they make a saving throw. And then if they fail the saving throw, they will take some damage. And again, like the Acid Vial, it creates a surface. So all of these arrows actually deal the normal amount of damage plus do something else. So for Arrow of Acid, a bit like the Acid Vial, it's okay. But if you've got a rogue, you can't use this with sneak attack at the same time. Even though you probably should be able to, but in-game... you either choose sneak attack or you use an Arrow of Acid. So you can't use both at once. So likewise, Arrow of Fire, since I've already covered Alchemist's Fire, I'm going to stick that in B. Does an extra 1d4 fire damage, but also has the utility of fire. Arrow of Ice does 1d4 cold damage, but actually maybe I should show this one because this one's quite good. Let's wait until Shadowheart's turn. So yeah, they just run out of the acid. They do try and avoid surfaces. So Shadowheart can take arrows of ice. Try and shoot this agile. Anyone easier to shoot? Yeah, let's go for the Robust Guardian. So one nice thing here is that the Arrow of Ice can make someone fall prone. Because of the ice itself, the DC for that is 12. I think that's just a set DC. And if they fail that, that's good. But you have to be careful if you've got your characters nearby that they might slip on the ice. There is a pair of boots from near that would stop you from falling prone, which is good. But that's just an item you get quite far on, and you only get one of it. So it's nice to have the extra damage with these arrows. One other thing to take into account with the Arrow of Lightning and Arrow of Ice is that if the enemies are wet, they will take double the cold damage and lightning damage. It's not a huge amount. 1d4 times 2 instead of 1d4, or both cold and lightning. Lightning provides an effect much like fire that they take 1d4 lightning damage at the start of their turn. So all of these are nice. They've got nice effects apart from just the damage. They create a surface. Some of you might hate that they create a surface. I know some people don't like that, but it is what it is if we're going to use it. So still have 3 arrows remaining. Oh, she does have a crossbow. Good. So which one was next? Arrow of Darkness. I don't find myself using these very often. So it's got an Arrow of Darkness before I shoot it. So it does a normal amount of damage, 1d8 because it's a light crossbow. Tavzik here has got +2 in dexterity for the modifier, so 1d8 +2, and creates a cloud of magical darkness where it lands. Maybe I should use this more often. So I could shoot... I'm going to try and shoot somebody because well, it deals damage. And then enemies are blinded inside, but we'd be blinded as well, unless perhaps we have the Warlock Invocation. So the Arrow of Darkness doesn't deal any extra damage and doesn't apply a condition to an enemy, but it does create an Area of Darkness, which you could hide in. I'm struggling to place this, actually. Like I said, I don't use these very often. You can use it to control the battlefield. You could use it for stealth. I'm trying to base this on not how often I use things, but maybe how often they should be used. But I'm not exactly blown away by Arrows of Darkness. They're nice to maybe save a spell slot if you wanted to use Fog Cloud or Darkness itself as a spell. In fact, I'm going to think about that more. Arrows of Darkness, you can find them around. You can buy them. A few enemies have them. I think if you're going to use it properly, it's probably an A item because you can force enemies to where you want them to go or stop them from going somewhere. You can hide in the cloud. And you can hide your whole party inside the cloud and then they basically won't ever come in and find you. I am open to persuasion for changing Arrow of Darkness though. Arrow of Illmater. I don't know how well the Arrow of Illmater will work on these guys. Let's just double check. Just immune to poison. Okay, that's cool. Arrow of Illmater, what does it do? It does a normal arrow amount of damage plus 1d4 necrotic damage and prevents the target from regaining hit points until the next turn. And there's no saving throw for that, it just works. Except these guys are obscured by shadows, which isn't so great. One downside to having Lae'zel here, she doesn't have dark vision. I don't think it's going to help going any closer. No, not really. Critical critical miss, of course. Anyway, had it hit, it only lasts until basically the creature's next turn. I'm going to put this in C because it's a bit too conditional, and we don't get huge amounts of these. I suppose you could buy them every time you see them, but you never necessarily know when an enemy's going to try and heal itself. And also, I would argue that most of the time, if an enemy is healing itself, that's probably a good thing because they're not killing you, and you quite often do more damage than they heal. So they're kind of wasting their action. Not completely. Maybe it helps them. But also, enemies heal each other, and you never quite know which enemy is going to heal which other enemy. So it could be bad if I'd used the Arrow of Ilmater on this Agile Guardian here, it would have been pointless because it goes next, or it goes after this Robust Guardian. So there would be one chance for the skeleton to have healed its ally. Skeletons don't heal each other, but that's not the point here. In some fights, you find that the allies do heal each other. They throw potions at each other. Some goblins do that. Sometimes the Githyanki patrol do heal themselves or heal each other. It's a bit too random to use this reliably. Then we come to the Arrow of Roaring Thunder, quite possibly my favorite arrow. Right, they're still waking each other up. Right, let's pass one of these arrows along to Shadowheart. So what does this do? It can do a normal amount of damage, and then creatures and objects caught in the blast are potentially pushed back. It doesn't tell us here what sort of throw they need to make, which is a bit of a surprise. I think they really should. Now, in this particular fight, the Arrow of Roaring Thunder isn't massively useful, but as you target, you can see what things will be knocked back. You see these blue arrows, which is quite cool. So it does let you know what's going to happen and in which direction they're going to go and potentially how far. And it depends on where you aim. So if I aim on the right hand side of the skeleton, it's going to go towards the left. If I aim on the left, it's going to go towards the right. Oh, look at that. So I can maybe try and get it into the acid. Maybe hit. It didn't work. They made the saving throw, which is very sad. Which is basically the only downside to this here. So the DC is 12, which isn't very high. Most enemies have a decent dexterity. It doesn't say it's a dexterity saving throw, but I'm quite sure it is. Skeletons, yeah, even their dexterity is at 14. So most enemies are going to pass the saving throw most of the time, I would say. Now, since the DC is low, I'm going to stick it only at A. If it had been a very high DC, or maybe based on the character who is actually using it, which I can check. I'll try it with Lae'zel in a second. So I might go back to the Arrow of Roaring Thunder. Before I do that, let's go to the next item, which is Basic Poison. I don't think Tavzik has any. Yeah, let's pass them to her. Oh, she's going to go... No, she's not quite going to be encumbered. Right, so what does this do? This uses a bonus action, which is quite nice, because we're not taking away from any casting or any attacks. And it adds 1d4 poison damage to whatever weapon you are currently wielding. So since Tavzik is wielding a light crossbow, if I use Basic Poison, the light crossbow gets the Basic Poison. And it says dipped in poison. Weapon deals additional poison damage for 3 turns. It lets us know how long it will last. Likewise, now although Shadowheart can't use her action to attack, we do have her with 2 melee weapons. There we are. And it applies it to both weapons. The only downside to this is you can only use your offhand attack with a bonus action. To anyone who's not a thief or using the Helmet of Grit, can't coat their offhand weapon in poison and then attack with that weapon in the same turn, but you get it in future turns. Now these guys are immune to poison, so it'd be pointless to even try and attack. Anyway, I think this is just a B. It gets saved from being a C because it's a bonus action, and you can apply it to 2 weapons. Unfortunately, you can't apply it to every weapon that you have in your inventory, or it's good to have. It's a nice small amount of damage to add, but it's not going to kill anyone in one go. It's just 1d4 poison damage. There's no save against it, so it is guaranteed. Next up is the bomb. Let's go get a bomb, or 5 of them. It's going to encumber her, but oh well, she'll live. So what do bombs do? 3d4 plus 9 force damage. That's quite good. They do get to make a dexterity saving throw though, and the radius is 13 feet. That's quite good. That is pretty good. You can see the radius, and it will affect objects in the area as well. So I'm hoping that this doesn't hurt either Tavzik or Lae'zel. And it does pretty good damage. Now, I think some of the furniture here was vulnerable to this damage here, which is why it said 36. So what's this? Failed saving throw yet. Fireball's DC is 12, so it looks like the DC is roughly 12. This is great. The only thing to be not exactly wary of, to keep in mind, is they are heavy. 10 pounds each or 5 kilograms each, and they do very quickly, that weight quickly adds up if you've got more than just 1 or 2. Also, it helps in a few different places where you're breaking down walls that have got medium toughness or low toughness. These bombs can help you break them Open. Okay, we'll let it go to the next turn. Next up is the Caustic Bulb. You find these on the Nautiloid and down in the Underdark. If you complete the Alchemist quest for Aurelium, he will sell some of these to you, I think. So let's give Gale some Caustic Bulbs. Here we are. What do? 1d4 acid damage. Creates a puddle of caustic brine that deals 1d4 acid damage per turn. So let's try and throw this. I've got a few people grouped up. Now, unlike some of the items we've already seen, we don't see an outline of who it's going to hit, but as we move the target around, you do see characters and enemies getting highlighted. I don't have a great chance to hit anyone here because everyone's obscured by shadows and Gale is a human. I'm going to try and throw it over there. It says it's not going to hit Laser. Oh no, path is interrupted. It says it's not going to hit Laser here. It says they were hit. I don't think there's actually any dexterity saving throw or anything. If they're in it, they take 1d4 damage and 1d4 acid damage next turn. I don't really like this very much. Considering it uses your action to do maybe 2d4 damage, I'm not very impressed. I kind of want to put it down here because most of these other items are going to do better than that. Like even the Arrow of Acid does at least 1d6 damage, or 1d8 depending on what ranged weapon you are wielding, plus a dexterity bonus, plus 1d4 acid damage, and creates an acid surface. But this acid surface is different to the Caustic Bulb. If the damage was higher, it might be better. But once it's on the ground, enemies do walk out of the surface. They don't just stand there taking 1d4 damage constantly. So you're pretty much going to get 2d4 damage. Maybe you can hit multiple people. Maybe you could put it as C. I'd never use Caustic Bulbs apart from maybe on the Nautiloid fighting against Commander Zulk. Next up will be the Grease Bottle. Lazar's already got one of these. Is she going to survive? Yeah, she'll be fine. She says, making her suffer a critical hit. Right, Grease Bottle. Can't move or act, has disadvantage on strength. Dexterity saving throws. This is actually talking about the prone condition. Attacks against a prone creature have advantage if they're made within 10 feet. A prone creature must spend half its movement speed to stand up. And this sort of fight, this is okay actually, because I can hit a few of them, but a bit like with ice, if the enemy is in grease and falls prone, so will you. So perhaps I could throw it there. And okay, one of them failed the saving throw. DC 12, dexterity. Again, most enemies have decent dexterity. But what it didn't say earlier is that the grease is actually difficult terrain. It says it down here when I hover over it, which is good. And it's flammable, so you can actually create a fire surface after this. So is this good? I think it is. I personally rarely remember to use this because always, as I've said earlier, we've got to remember that we are fighting for our action, or not we are fighting for it, but the Grease Bottle is fighting for its action against Lae'zel's normal actions. So for Lae'zel, what could she have done instead? She could potentially have killed one of these skeletons using one of her maneuvers, which I would prefer than having them slowed down because they can still attack. I'm struggling to whether to put an A or B. Since it doesn't do any damage by itself, probably going to stick it down in B. But they're definitely very useful, especially if you've got a situation like this where there's kind of a slightly enclosed space, or you can put it somewhere where the enemy has to go through. Because one nice thing, I'll see if it happens to Lae'zel, is if you're walking... she didn't fail. But if you're walking and fail your dexterity saving throw, you lose the rest of your turn. I should have made her take a healing potion. Oops. So that was good. The skeleton couldn't get very far away because of the bottle of grease. So I just want to point out, Shadowheart's weapons still have poison damage applied to them. So we're up to the Haste Spore. I said I was going to use the Arrow of Wrong Thunder with Lae'zel, never mind. We're up to the Haste Spore Flask. This is a rare item, as in you only get one or two of them. I can't remember how many actually. What does this do? This just shows you what Haste does. It says it's indefinite, so this is a bit risky. So let's use this. It shows you how large the spores are going to be. So if I throw it... it's interrupted. Yeah, it should be fine. Another critical hit. Should be fine. Throw it here. It's pretty much like a AoE for the Potion of Haste, which we'll get to later. So you can throw it. So if you use... Shadowheart's used an action. And she can run in, but she's just shy. She's just outside. If I'd made a jump, maybe she would have got him. Now let's go to Tabzik. She now has two actions. I just want to point out that this haste only lasts for one turn. However, it doesn't have the downside of the Potion of Haste. Again, we'll get to that later. So now Tabzik can show this off for us. Right, Haste Spore Flask. This is pretty much an critical hit, sorry. With the couple of caveats that there is pretty much only one of them. I can't remember if it's one or two you get from Sovereign Spore, and a wonderful seer that enemies can go inside it as well. So you want to keep them out of it. But this is really amazing because every turn, while the cloud remains, you can go and pick up Haste just by walking into it. And Shadowheart only had to use one action, and everyone is going to benefit from it. Yeah, really, really good. Right, Holy Water. Got some here. Holy Water deals 2d6 damage to fiends and undead. So there we are. That only did damage. Let's have a look. Oh, what happened there? We didn't see. Let's try again because I got 2 actions. So they got 5 hit points. Yeah, I missed. Had 2 shots. Okay, I think I was fairly unlucky. At disadvantage, that's why. A miss and a critical miss. And it's 2d6 damage to fiends and undead. Really not that impressed. It's a nice kind of thematic item, but it's just 2d6 damage. The average of 2d6 is 7. I can shoot the Robust Guardian for an average of, well, 7. Admittedly, some of that is from the poison, so it'll be a bit less. What would it be? For an average of like 5.5. It isn't AoE. But yeah, the other thing to think about is how many fiends and undead do we come across? We come across some on the Nautiloid, but we don't have this on the Nautiloid. And the number of undead we actually come across also is very limited. The only reason I'm down here with the skeletons is because I wanted to test out Holy Water on the skeletons here, because they are some undead. And the water on this ground is now just normal water. Yeah, you're rarely going to use this. You barely get any of them, and you can miss with it anyway, dealing 0 damage. It's not guaranteed damage. So yeah, critical miss for me. Potion, or not potion, the Holy Water. Right, up next, I don't really need to use this in combat, but I can just talk about it here anyway. Potion of Animal Speaking takes a bonus action. So now Tavsik, until a long rest, can comprehend and communicate with beasts. And the last time I said that speaking with animals isn't needed, someone said that it's basically like driving a car without, like, I can't remember what they said now, like without the chassis or something, or with the seats, or I can't remember what, without wheels, I don't know. It saves a spell slot. You can buy lots of them from Volo at the beginning, near the beginning of the game. It saves you from having to cast it and gives you the ability to speak with animals, which is great. Doesn't need concentration or anything, but you don't actually need Potion of Animal Speaking. It's nice to have. You know, speaking with animals is good. It's mostly quite a bit of fun, provides some alternative routes through the game, but you can easily do without it if you wanted to. So I'm going to leave it at B. If speaking with animals was more important in terms of actually progressing through the game, then maybe I'd put it up higher, but it's not absolutely necessary. Okay, next up, since Shadowheart can do this, the Potions of Resistance. And the Potions of Resistance, we got Poison, Lightning, Force, Lightning again, Psychic, supposed to be a Psychic one there, Cold and Fire, there might be some more I've left out, so take it. So now she has Fire Resistance, you are resistant to fire damage, which means you take half damage, and odd numbers get rounded down, which is nice. Yeah, it's alright. You have to know when you're going to be coming up against certain types of damage ahead of time, but one thing to keep in mind, which I can't really show until next turn, is that you can only have one of these active at any one time. Alright, Shadowheart didn't die. She still has her fire resistance. So if I then take a potion of, cold resistance, it swaps. We can't stack different potions of resistance. If we could, then maybe I'd stick this up higher. But I suppose this is to stop people from becoming resistant to almost every type of damage every long rest, or certain characters. If you knew exactly what type of damage you were coming up against, maybe you could put it higher. One thing you can do, which is very much, hey, the Haste Spores. You get 2 actions here. Does Shadowheart have any potions? No, I'm going to give her some potions of Force Resistance. What you can do, if you get multiple characters close to each other, you can throw them on the floor, which creates a cloud which immediately gets used up. You can actually get... I have had all 4 characters once all gain the benefit of a potion of lightning resistance. If you're happy to cheese it all the time, I'd maybe put it up to A. But if you're using it as a bonus action or throwing it to a single character, I'm going to leave it at a B. Okay, up next are the potions of greater healing and healing. These do exactly what you want them to and do what they say on the tin, as it were. So here is the potion of healing, does 2d4 plus 2 damage, which is something, I suppose. We also have potions of greater healing, which are much better, 4d4 plus 4 damage. And since I'm just showing things off, I'm going to use a potion of greater healing. You can heal 2 people, 16 and 14, that was fairly lucky as things go. I'm going to stick the potion of greater healing at critical hit for now, and potion of healing at A, because they actually use bonus actions in combat. So I did it earlier with Lae'zel. If someone's taking damage, just use every bonus action for potion of healing. And with the potions of healing being quite well populated in the game and only using a bonus action, you can buy them. They're cheap to buy as well. It's not exactly an alternative for clerics, but it means you can play the game without having a cleric and not get into too much trouble. All right, next up, Potion of Heal Giant Strength. Possibly not really for Tavzik here, but since it is her turn. What do these do? Uses a bonus action, strength increased to 21, lasts for 10 turns, which is nice. It's a decent amount of time. I didn't actually use one. Right, so Tavzik. I wouldn't normally use this on a sorcerer, but now if you come to here, it gives you basically a +5 bonus to attack for strength, and also means your jump distance is much higher, although she's already used her bonus action. It goes, let's come to here first. Get some haste, so we've got lots of movement speed. Got to find an enemy now. I'm gonna have to risk. This could be bad. She passed. So now she has a 70% chance to hit. Yeah, these are good. Wow. Oh, they're vulnerable to bludgeoning damage, which is great. So you've got +5 strength modifier for the attack roll and damage roll. Increases your jump distance, increases your athletics check, so more likely to shove. Although that uses a bonus action, so I can't actually do that now. How about what Gale will do? Gain an action. We will give him the potions of Heal Giant Strength. So all of the potions you can pretty much throw. Let's just do this here for the sake of it. So he now has the potion of Heal Giant Strength, and you can see he can now jump really far. Even get up to there, especially since he's hasted as well. Unfortunately, the whole point of me doing this was to show that what happens when we shove, but I messed that up. So now we can just attack. Critical miss. What can you do? Anyway, we're going to put that. Kind of tempted to put it a critical hit, but because it uses a bonus action and only lasts 10 turns, so it'll last you for a combat. But you can give it to more than one person if you're willing to cheese it by throwing it. But that's cool. Yeah, potions of Heal Giant Strength. Basically good for your melee characters. Get them, use them. They're a bit expensive compared to some of the other items here, but well worth it. Alright, has anyone got any actions left? She does. What have we got next? Potion of Invisibility. Does what it says on the tin. Now, I've not tried to throw one of the... Oh, no, it's Tavzik. I've not tried to throw one of these before. I didn't use these very often. In combat, potentially not the most useful. This would normally be used to set up things in combat, I would say. Yeah, we can throw it. So now she's invisible. She can walk around without being targeted. Oh, she can fall over. That's what I wanted to show, right? She fell over, and now her turn is over. I can't move or anything. It says she's unconscious, which is a bit over the top. So yeah, grease is good when it works, or to be careful, it does work against you. Anyway, the invisibility potion. I'm gonna leave this at B. It can, like I said, it can be used to set up some good combinations before combat. I think I've seen Sinti use these before, like grouping people up, fighting against the Githyanki patrol, grouping them up, and then you can use a potion of invisibility to sneak up on them easily. Also helps you pickpocket things for potentially not exactly free, but continuously pickpocket things without having to worry about if you're in the vision cone or not, because you are just invisible. In combat, I suppose you could use it to not get out of jail, but to run away. When it's only 10 turns, it's a much weaker version of the spell. Potion of Sleep. Yeah, it uses a bonus action. I'm going to use this. It's a bit silly. What am I going to do? So I'll show you what I'll do. I can't use it on Shadowheart because she's an elf. I'm going to use this on Gale. This is potentially very bad for me. Just going to pick up some haste. Spores, because we can. The cloud's still there. So the Potion of Sleep isn't really for you. Making yourself go to sleep. I think skeletons are immune to sleep, which is why I'm going to throw it just here maybe. Oh no, they're not. Cool. The Potion of Sleep will put basically anyone to sleep. It doesn't matter their hit points. You can throw this at the bullet, even at full health, 105 hit points, and it will send it to sleep. This is super powerful. It's like easily critical hit. There aren't very many of them though. True Soul Gut has one, and I think I've saw one other one somewhere. I can't remember right now. Sorry about that. But use it wisely. Use it against an enemy that can be slept. Actually, I just want to test, since I really didn't think the skeleton would be able to be put to sleep. Let's throw this at Shadowheart. Yeah, she's immune to sleeping. Yeah, if something is immune to sleeping, then it won't work, but otherwise it will. And most enemies aren't immune to sleep. Basically anything with elven blood, either half elf or full elf, can't be put to sleep, and maybe some fey creatures as well. Yeah, very, very powerful. Potion of Speed. I've almost been waiting for this to appear. I'm not going to use it now because we're already hasted. Looking for Shadowheart, but she's invisible, so can't find her. Sleep is sleep. So let's move her out the haste spores, and then she can just take one of these. So it uses a bonus action, which is nice. And you get hastened for 3 turns. I didn't show you earlier. It also adds 2 to your armor class. Gives you advantage on dexterity saving throws, and your movement speed is doubled, not just having an extra action. Downside to this though, is that after 3 turns, you become lethargic, which basically means you lose your turn. You can't move or act. You can't do anything on that turn, so you become kind of vulnerable to attack. So we've got 2 actions, and that will be at the wherever we end up at the start of next turn. She'll have 2 actions. So let's turn on. Okay, let's just attack. So you can attack. What you can do, I maybe should have done, is you can cast 2 spells. It's not like D&D 5th edition. I think all of us playing Baldur's Gate 3 know this by now. For me, this is a critical hit. This is like my clutch potion. In a stream a couple of weeks before recording this, I was fighting the Spider Queen. I was getting in quite a lot of trouble. Popped one of these on one of my characters and basically turned everything around. I don't usually use them every combat. I keep them for when things are getting difficult. Traders will sell them occasionally at random. You find them on the Mind Flayer corpses towards the beginning on the Nautiloid and in the beach area. Alright, we've still got an action. What I'm actually going to do to help show the use of the next consumable is I need to create poison surface. This is something I didn't show earlier with the bottle of poison, basic poison. That's to her. If we throw some poison, throw it here next to Shadow, next to Lae'zel, it creates a surface of poison. I should have shown that earlier. So let's see if this works. So the next item is a potion of vitality. There aren't many of these around, I don't think. Right, you go there. Let's throw potion of vitality. Hopefully this works. Don't know if it will actually. Yeah. There we are. Cures poison, which is nice. It doesn't do much more than that though. Removes exhausted status, we don't have that. And cures any poison or disease. We don't have many diseases in the game at the moment. Basically cures any poison. I'm going to leave this at C, a bit like the Antitoxin. It's nice to have when you need it, but you're not going to find yourself using it a lot. Definitely not a critical miss. It's something you kind of need, but it's rare to use, and you know, it's not so important. And there are other ways of curing poison as well, such as Antitoxin. Right, up next is a scroll of Revivify. So maybe I'll have to go and... Oh no, he's sleeping. Didn't prevent her from being poisoned. Antitoxin would have been better to throw, I think. Right, who are we going to kill? We need to kill someone. All right, get in there. Alright, I'll sort this out. I'll be back. Okay, Shadowheart killed Lae'zel. Probably what she wants to do. Scroll of Revivify. They have to be dead. And then you can place them anywhere within, I think it's 30 foot. Yeah, 30 foot radius. Maybe living dangerous life. Teleport Lae'zel up there. And they re-roll their initiative, which is interesting. Yeah, we've still got an action. This, I think, easily an A. The only downside is they're expensive, and the character comes back with just 1 hit point. Was it 1 hit point? She's got 3 hit points. Don't know how they decide that, actually. Maybe it's 10%. Does it say? Oh no, it says return to life with 1 hit point. Somehow Lae'zel's got 3. Anyway, yeah, it's the sort of thing that you'll hopefully rarely use, but when you really need it, you really need it. Like, you don't want to be caught without one. They're not completely necessary. It's cheaper to revive back in camp, but depending on the situation, you might want to get somebody back very quickly. So yeah, I think it's easy to give Scroll of Revivify an A. Right, what's next? Smokepowder Satchel. So Shadowheart doesn't have any. Let's give her some. So it's an action to throw. It's got a square, actually, which is interesting. Anyway, targets must make a DC 12 dexterity saving throw or take 3d4 plus 9 force damage. Not fire damage, force damage. On a successful save, targets still take half damage. When ignited, bag explodes. So let's stick it up here. It hasn't exploded. It does have hit points. And then somebody else is going to have to set it alight. Tavzik has firebolt. So we set it alight. Boom. It actually knocks them back as well. It's a shockwave. Maybe we should short rest. There's the lethargic condition for Shadowheart. I think much like the bomb, really. Though there is the downside that it takes effectively... Well, you can drop it. You don't have to throw it. You can drop it, run away, throw a firebolt, fire, arrow of fire at it, alchemist fire at it, which is also one of the reasons you want to have some arrows of fire or alchemist's fire if nobody can cast firebolt. Right, I'm going to go and find another fight to use the last few items in. Next is the spiked bulb. Throw a strange device. This is found on the Nautiloid. That inflicts 1 piercing damage and applies bleeding. Takes 2 slashing damage at the start of each turn and has disadvantage on Constitution saving throws. So how good is this going to be? Let's throw a spiked bulb. We can see what it's going to hit by what's highlighted. Maybe let's throw it there. So hit them for 1 damage. They are now also bleeding for 1 turn. Well, we'll see what happens on their turn. But 1 damage is not very much, obviously. And 2 damage on the next turn isn't very much. Let's just try and sort these guys out. Well done, Lae'zel. And then it's gone. Bleeding is gone. It's just one turn. So the Spike Bulb does 3 damage to anyone it hits. There is one slight positive side to it though. There's this Constitution saving throw. Okay. So what I'm going to do with Gale, just to show you one potential good use for Spiked Bulbs, is going to take a Potion of Haste. Potion of Speed, even. I often call it a Potion of Haste by accident. Please forgive me. So I'm going to come here, throw... Oh, he doesn't have a Spike Bulb with him. Throw a Spike Bulb. Make sure we're going to hit Claw. Yeah, there he is. He's bleeding. So don't forget that bleeding gives disadvantage on Constitution saving throws. So what Gale can now do is maybe use Thunder Wave. It doesn't tell us the chance to hit, but we will see. That Claw had disadvantage on that. So... in terms of damage, it's pretty much critical miss. I mean, 3 damage against a few enemies. But if you can link it with a spell or ability that forces a Constitution saving throw, then that's probably a B, but it's not necessarily going to be easy. It can be removed by healing as well. I don't think the AI usually does that. If you're being very clever about it, perhaps a B, but since it's such low damage, I'm going to leave it at C. So next is the Void Bulb, one of my favourite. Oh, there's Alchemist Fire coming in. It's annoying. It's annoying for us because if we're concentrating on a spell, it forces a Constitution saving throw. And every time we're forced to roll it, there's a chance to fail. Right, Void Bulb. Tabzik has some. Good. What do these do? Creates a force that pulls in nearby objects and creatures unless they succeed a DC 14 Dexterity saving throw. Which is kind of middling. Not so easy, but it's not very high. Most enemies do have a good dexterity, as mentioned earlier. If I come and have a look here, dexterity 13, so they only get a +1 potentially. Over here, dexterity 13. Anyway, in this particular fight, the Void Bulbs aren't overly useful, although I can try and get the tracker down. Doesn't look like it's going to be close enough. Anyway, so let's do this. So they must have failed their saving throws. It doesn't show it though. I've definitely had times where I've thrown a Void Bulb and essentially nothing happens. It does 1 force damage. Yeah, it's not, you know, you're not throwing this for the force damage. Does it tell us that it does? Oh, it's 1d4. Okay, so I think that's wrong, essentially. It's not 1d4 anymore. Like, this has changed in previous patches. We can see, since previous patches, we can see that it's just damage roll 1, 1, 1. No matter how many times I throw it, it will always be 1. That was 2 from damage from bleeding. No Void Bulbs. I'm just going to throw another Void Bulb just to prove that this is not correct anymore. This is wrong. So click on a Void Bulb. Let's want to hit more than 1 if I can. And 1 damage. I mean, the difference between 1 and 1d4 isn't really that big, but you know, it's less than what it used to be. Anyway, this goes up in A. It's not very useful in this fight. I mean, it's mostly because that's goblins anyway. If you can set it up to pull some enemies together to set up an AoE, that is great. But it's even more useful for times where you can pull people down from somewhere high down to somewhere low, which causes full damage and potentially takes them out the battlefield or make them use extra movement to get back up or something like that. Next up is water. It's not... Oh, no, I was about to say it's not very useful in combat. I'm going to really have to use Second Wind here. And I'm going to use Action Surge right now anyway. So, water. Where's my water gone? It doesn't appear there. Let's throw some water. So we'll get a pool of water formed. It doesn't show us exactly where that will be. But let's throw some here. It will actually, let's throw some here. So what does it do? It's good for a few things. Puts out any flames if there are flames beneath where it lands, and inflicts the wet condition, which can be used both defensively and offensively. You've got to be very careful. So while wet, you are resistant to fire damage. Good, but vulnerable to lightning and cold. Bad for you, good if it's on the enemy. Also, it prevents you from burning. So Small Claw here could actually walk through the fire completely unharmed. That's what I meant by using it defensively, is I could have cast this here perhaps, thrown it here, covered Shadowheart Gale and Lae'zel herself, would have put out any fires and prevents them from being put on fire. So now that Small Claw is wet, perhaps I can shoot an arrow of lightning. Please work. There we are. That was lucky, I rolled a maximum damage there. Doubled the amount of damage anyone does with cold and lightning. Unfortunately, he doesn't have the lightning condition, but did deal extra damage. I'm going to stick this in B. This is pretty much purely a utility. One of the few utility items here. It's nothing to do with damage. Dealing damage or healing, or taking conditions off of you. Although it does take off the burn condition. I'll take that back. But the wet condition is useful to have when you're in the burning house, for example. At Walking's Rest. It's not really burning house, is it? It's more like an inn. And it's good for setting up for your casters, the wet condition, so they can completely wipe people out with lightning and cold damage. And also creates water, which you can then hit with cold, not just to deal double damage, but to create some ice. Anyway, lastly, we have Wyvern Poison. Oof. What was that? That was grease. Alright, I really want to give this to Lae'zel. I'm going to wait for Lae'zel's turn. Why Lae'zel, you ask? Well, I've given her a greatsword, which you can apply Wyvern's Poison to. Plus, she's also hasted at the moment, so she should get 2 attacks. Alright, I'm actually going to create some water now. Tired of being set on fire. Hopefully, they didn't use any cold or lightning damage. Oh, she's not hasted. Whoops, it's someone else. That was Gale. Never mind. Right. So, Wyvern Poison. It's a bit of conflicting information here. Creatures must succeed a DC 10 Constitution saving throw. That's fairly easy for them to pass. Most of them will be at least 60% or higher. Or take 3d6 poison damage. On a successful save, creature suffers half normal damage. Then just beneath, deals 7d6 poison damage, halved if it succeeds a DC 15 Constitution saving throw. Well, let's try it out. Let's make sure we put it on her greatsword, shall we? So it's a bonus action. And here, plus 3d6. I don't remember exactly which patch this got changed. I think either 6 or 7. It did used to do 7d6 poison damage, which is absolutely amazing. This still isn't bad, it's just not as good as it used to be. And it does stack with things like sneak attack or pushing attack or trip attack. This is a bit over the top, really. So yeah, it did 3d6 poison damage. Ha! I did not realise this until just now, I'd always wondered. So it says reroll. We can see we got 4, 1, 4, 3. Now why does it say reroll? Plus it says 3d6, but there are 4 dice rolled there. This is almost certainly because Lae'zel has Great Weapon Fighter, the fighting style, which lets her reroll any 1s or 2s. It should really just be with the greatsword itself, but it seems to apply to any other kind of damage done with it. So that's pretty cool. That was a good person to share that with. And we've got a reroll here because we've got a 2, we got 5 and 5. Anyway, so Great Weapon Fighter. The fighting style for Great Weapon Fighting is actually better in Baldur's Gate 3 than perhaps it is in 5th edition. So where's this going to go? At least in A. I think there are 3 or 4 bottles or containers of this. I don't know whether to put it in critical hit. It doesn't do as much damage as it used to, and the DC 10 is much easier than the DC 15 it used to be. I think I'm going to leave it at A. This would be really good if you've got extra attacks from either Potion of Haste or the Haste Spore flasks, or on your offhand, like a Thief or Thief with the Helmet of Grit that is activated. You can get lots of extra damage out. Last 3 turns, it probably is better to give it to someone dual wielding, so you can get hopefully maximum number of attacks from it. So yeah, there we are. Here is my list. Basically, most of the items are quite useful. The ones in C are probably just a bit too situational to rely on every single combat. Spike Bulb maybe could go up. These 2 at the bottom are just, the damage is too low or far too conditional for the Holy Water. The fact we can miss with it is what really lets it down. So let me know if you're going to want to put anything higher or lower. I think some people might put the Void Bulb and Wyvern Poison higher, maybe the Bomb higher. Some of you might put some of these lower. I'm a bit indifferent to the arrows. Quite happy to use them, but I'm never always looking for the chance to use them. Alright, if you made it this far, please consider subscribing. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.